Namaste everyone, this is Sai Swarupa Iyer and we are meeting back for Indic Book Club Author Q&A session. And for today's Author Q&A, we have a very passionate author whose love of life is Mahabharata, Srimanti Chakravarti. After majoring in physics, Srimanti Chakravarti turned to her area of passion, the Mahabharata. She hopes to revive and rekindle interest in the knowledge of Bhagavan Veda Vyasa through her reimagination of the story of Yudhishthira, which she is bringing out as a trilogy called, where the first book is called The Rise of Dharma, and we are awaiting the next two books in the series. Welcome, Srimanti. It's a pleasure to have you. And it's also very rare to meet an author, to a woman author who wants to reimagine the story of Yudhishthira, of all the characters in the Mahabharata. Before we get into talking about the book itself, do please share with us about your journey of the Mahabharata.
First of all, thank you so much, Indic Book Club, for inviting me here. I'm really honored and I'm blessed to come to this platform, and nothing can be greater pleasure for me than to have a discussion with my own writing mentors, I saw fire, and I'm very blessed for that. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So regarding my writing, regarding my journey of the Mahabharata that you asked, so, like many other Indian children, I am blessed to grow up with the story of the Mahabharata. My grandmother was there to tell me the stories from childhood. And then we had the children books, the kids' version of those colored books with the images of the characters. And that was very attractive to draw the attention to the story. So, from the beginning, this was the beginning of my journey. And I remember that from the very beginning, I was liking Lord Krishna, and obviously after him the Pandavas, the heroes of the epic. From then only, for me the heroes means the Pandavas, and here I include Draupadi also because she is a sixth Pandava for me. And many will agree here with me that she obviously is the sixth Pandava, and all of them were my favorite characters from that age only. So then, when I grew up a little more, when I was in high school in class 11, then I first got to read the proper Mahabharata, that is not a full version though. That was a Bengali translation and a summarized translation written by Rajshekhar Bosu.
What's the author's name again?
Rajshekhar Bosu. The Bengali name, actually, I'm pronouncing in Bengali.
Rajshekhar Ghosh.
Rajshekhar Ghosh. I have mentioned in my author's note also. He is commonly known as Parashuram in Bengali. That is his pen name. So his version, that was the Bengali version, and a kind of summarized translation. That was my first proper reading of the stories of the Mahabharata, which I did not know, and it left me with a lot of knowledge that I did not get from those kids' books, or my grandmother did not tell me, my parents did not tell me. Those things, or I have watched the serials from childhood, that serials also did not tell me, or somewhere I see that those tales are not matching with what I have watched in TV. So those things started to come. And another thing I remember that that was my beginning of my love for Yudhishthira from that version, that summarized Bengali translation. I remember that in the preface, Rajshekhar Bose has a very beautiful essay. There he claims Yudhishthira as the central protagonist of the epic and the hero of the epic. That is a big claim. So I never thought like that. And when I read his explanation of why he thinks so, And again, how he is translating his story, the parts where Yudhishthira is very, we'll come to that, how Yudhishthira is very good and his positive sides, how he has written those parts, that made me like him even more. So that was the starting. And after this book, I was very much interested in the epic. Then I started reading more and more on the epic. I switched to the other works by other authors, including both fiction and non-fiction. Then one thing came to my notice, that is, the character Yudhishthira I am liking so much does not have a very good reputation or very good image to most of the people. Most of the people, that means it can be common people around me in my Bengali community or a scholar. It can be anyone, but it does not have very, he doesn't have any very good reputation to most of the people. So that I found one thing, that he is mostly seen as a selfish brother, a jealous husband, and overall a gambler, the weakest point, the point with which we criticize the most. So I found that his positive traits are very overlooked, very much overlooked, and not highlighted that much. So that bothered me a lot for the first time. So I was thinking that why then the Krishna, the best kingmaker, the greatest kingmaker of his time, even if you don't call him a god, if even if he's a most intelligent person of his time, why would that person, that kingmaker, choose this Yudhishthira as the emperor of his land? That question came to my mind. Then, was he that bad? Was he nothing beyond being a gambler? Why we are seeing only in the dice hall and not beyond that? This question started to make me rethink. So after this, I decided kind of from my passion that a decision came that why should not I try? Why should not I try to do something for this Yudhishthira whom I love so much? Why should not I try something to write on him and to bring out his positive sides to the readers? So it started in 2014. I actually thought to write something, and I did not know if I could write anything or not. But it was mainly emotion driven initially.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for that. I think I'm going to make a note of Rajshekhar Ghosh ji's translation, because it's rare that we come across versions of Mahabharata which have Yudhishthira as the protagonist. So that now that brings me to my second question about this perception about Yudhishthira, right? And most of the critics of Yudhishthira, their criticism of him is it hinges on one event, that is wagering of Draupadi in the Dyuta Sabha, right? And for some surprising reason, they don't seem to be that disturbed with him wagering himself or his brothers, and was the kingdom. There are so many unnamed people whose destinies are just written in a second, rewritten in a second, because he chose to transfer the power. Somehow, unfortunately, we don't have enough discussion about that going on, and a lot of it hinges on Draupadi. But I'm hoping you'll cover that part in the second book. So to the viewers, Rise of Dharma, uh, it explores the trajectory of Samrat Yudhishthira from his entry into Hastinapura as an orphaned son of Pandu, entering his familial home for the first time, till he becomes the Chakravarti Samrat of Bharatvarsha, after till the point of Rajasuya. And I am waiting for her next book. That's where a lot of interesting events would happen, and I'm very interested to look at her way of looking at the Dyuta Sabha as well as Vanaparva, which is the most beautiful chapter of Mahabharata in my view. So, Simanti, I wouldn't ask you to, spoil the suspense of your book too or anything like that. But would you share us some of the share with the viewers some of the high points of Yudhishthira's trajectory that most of us miss?
Yes, that is a very good question actually, Sai, because you said it correctly. Because I also think that we are limiting our vision on his character only on that single day of that dice game. And we are missing many other days of his life. And his life is 18 Parvas long epic. And we are missing most of that part. Before the dice game also he had a life. After the dice game also he had a life. We are missing that. So we should not. So let's talk something about that. First of all, I would like to start from the very basic, that is his adherence to the dharma. We all know that he is a follower of the dharma, but what dharma is actually to him? He himself answers to the Lord Dharma when he comes to test him as the in the disguise of Yaksha.
This is from the Yaksha Prashna, right?
From the Yaksha Prashna. So then the Lord Dharma himself asks his son that what is the highest dharma? So what Yudhishthira replies? He replies that the highest dharma is anvishamsa. That is the, in English it will be just plain non-violence, but actually I believe this anvishamsa is much more than that. He actually means to say that for him the highest dharma is not to hurt anyone, be it physically, be it emotionally, be it economically, not to hurt or harm any creature. That is the highest dharma for him. And we always will see that he indeed practices what he preaches. That is very important for someone, that he is not simply a preacher of the rule book dharma, but he is the practicer of it. Immediately after this quest, the question and answer session with Lord Dharma, we will see that the god is very pleased with his son, and he is still in disguise, but he is giving him the option that I will save any one of your brothers, you choose. So Yudhishthira, without thinking a second time, is choosing Nakula, not his own brothers Bhima and Arjuna. Why so? He is again saying that reason is his dharma, because he cannot hurt the emotion of the Madri's soul, who is his late stepmother, but he still cares for her, and he cannot just let her both sons die. That is partiality for him, and that is cruelty, that is nishamsa for him. So he has to practice the anvishamsa, and he has to care for both his mothers, Kunti and Madri. So since he is alive, he has to ensure that the at least one son, the eldest son of Madri, also survives. That is one. That is a very well-known part of the epic. Another one I would like to say, that is another test of Lord Dharma. That is before he enters to heaven, he earned the heaven by his own karma, by his own virtues. But in front of the Lord of heaven, the King of gods, he is rejecting heaven plainly, saying that I cannot enter, won't enter unless you allow this dog who has come with me. That is a very big thing. Actually, here also he cannot be cruel to that dog who was in his shelter, and he mentions also there that it is my dharma that I cannot abandon this dog who has come with me. This was actually, we know that dog was none but his celestial father himself, and that was the second test he was taking. And his third test also, we see that he was shown the hell, and be it illusion, be it anything else, he was shown the hell, and he saw that all his loved ones were in the hell. He willingly rejects heaven there also and chooses to live in the hell just because his family and friends were there. After this, Lord Dharma himself comes and says, I was testing you, my son. You have passed with flying colors and you are maintaining your moral standard. That's why you already deserve heaven. So thus he goes to the heaven final. So this is actually the some of the examples of his what dharma means to him. Next, another thing I would like to share that is one of my very favorite parts from the epic. I remember when I read this part from the Rajshekhar Ghosh's Mahabharata, it was the first incident that made me fall in love with Yudhishthira. That is Ajagara Parva, the incident with the Nahusha, the big serpent, who was none other but the ancestor of the Pandavas, Nahusha, who was the son of Jajati, the ancestor of Pandavas. He was cursed by one of the Saptarishis due to his some ill manner and ill behavior to the goddess Indrani. He was cursed to become that large serpent in the forest. And also that Rishi has told him that your descendant Yudhishthira will liberate you from this condition. So in this forest, we see what one day Bhima was he has left his hut for hunting, and he was suddenly seized by this large serpent, who was none but the Nahusha himself. Then Bhima's all strength suddenly failed that day. He could not escape from the grip of that serpent. He almost was ready to die. He gave up. But then Yudhishthira comes into the picture. He was already out of the hut for searching his brother. And then he comes to the spot and sees this condition. He sees and understands the situation. Then first what he does that is very natural for him, he tells the serpent that, listen, serpent, the great serpent, leave my brother, I will give you alternative food. But the serpent was not at all interested in food. He was interested with a question and answer session. So he starts asking questions to Yudhishthira. The very first question is very mind-blowing answer I'm going to share. The first question he asks that who is a Brahmana? Who is a true Brahmana? So there Yudhishthira answers that a person who has 7 qualities in him, he is considered to be a Brahmana. Which 7 qualities? He mentions those 7 qualities. First is honesty, truth, charity, forgiveness, good conduct or good behavior, benevolence, observance of rights of his order, and mercy. These 7 qualities, if there are these 7 qualities in any person, according to Yudhishthira, he should be called the Brahmana. So then Nahusha was a bit surprised. Nahusha asked that, how so? This is very generalized answer. These qualities are very generalized ones and it can be found in anyone, in any person. So if we see these qualities in any Shudra, then what should we call him? Then Yudhishthira's reply is, any person having these 7 qualities can never be a Shudra. He is obviously a Brahmin. Now, this is something actually amazed me when I first read in that summarized version itself. And in this high school days only, I was just surprised and I was awestruck by this. That how can someone in this time can say so liberally that Brahmin is not someone by birth, but by virtues, by character. So that was something actually attracted me more towards him. Even if you see that in his question and answer session with the Yaksha, he also repeats the similar thing, because here also we have a similar question. The Yaksha asks him that, how do you define a Brahmin? Is it by birth or by behavior or by learning or studying? What? 4 options given. So Yudhishthira selects the second one, that is the behavior. Not by birth, not by learning or studying anything, just plainly behavior or character. He also mentions that uh, generally we don't see him giving so large answer in those questions, but here he explains a little bit with another verse. So that sloka says that if any Brahmin is very well educated, well versed in all the scriptures, all the shastras, still if his character is not good, he is performing wicked deeds, then he is considered to be an illiterate. So that is basically echoing his word from what is discusses with Nahusha. The same thing comes here also. So this liberal thought, this liberal mindset about the caste system, what we many of you don't, many of we don't know, we skip these things very often, but this is something makes him stand out from the others.
Yes, so yes, that's thank you for that very beautiful enunciation of Ajagara Parva, because that gets overlooked by many readers and interpreters of Mahabharata. Because that's one incident that sheds a lot of light on the liberal nature of Yudhishthira, in the sense uh, it just proves that he has truly internalized all the shastras that he has read and actually practices them, in a intelligent manner. So that's one episode, even which amazed me, to be honest, when I was reading the Mahabharata. So that brings me, when we are talking about the guna based varna, instead of the birth based varna, that brings us that to the point that the varna is decided by the gunas. Like, so with this 7 gunas makes a brahmana. And when there is this discussion on the varna, I'm reminded of Karna. And again, even he is hailed as another flawed hero, right? And only thing is, I'm tempted to ask this question, because there's a new movie in Tamil named Karnan, where it's a modern movie. It's a story set in modern India, where the protagonist is fighting for the downtrodden, and then the movie claims to be inspired by Karna, who's also but was Karna actually a mascot of the downtrodden? In the words of many interpreters of Mahabharata, many writers who have explored Mahabharata, so was he really a mascot of the downtrodden?
Well, first of all, he himself was not a downtrodden. He himself did not represent that downtrodden group of people, because he was not a Shudra. He was a Shuta who was born out of the intercaste marriage of Kshatriya and Brahmana. His foster, that means a father, Kshatriya father and a Brahmin mother. Their children is called the Shuta. And they were nowhere near.
Same rule applied to Yadu, right? From Yayati and
Yes,
Devyani. So
yes, yes,
Devyani is the
yes,
Brahmin
exactly,
woman. So
exactly.
yeah, Devyani's
So,
sons become Sutas by that rule.
yes,
Yadavas are Sutas.
Jadavasa Sutas. And if we see the main narrator of the Mahabharata, Ugrasrava, he himself is a Shuta. Also, we would see that if you remember Kichaka, he also was that.
Kichaka.
Kichaka.
I
And
did.
we know his role in his kingdom. We all are aware of his role in the kingdom.
He was
That
the
was even,
commander of, he was the
yes,
Senapati of Matsya.
yes, that was officially, but unofficially he was over the king.
Yeah.
So actually, and so was Queen Sudeshna, the same caste. So how could Pandavas choose her daughter as their bride, as their daughter-in-law? So if Shudras were like some downtrodden and the low caste like Shudras, as people generally believe, so that was not possible. So that is very much true that Karna was not someone downtrodden, and regarding his effort to, I don't see any effort mentioned in the text as a ruler that he is doing something or trying something to uplift these downtrodden people or to improve the lives of these people. Rather, we never see any respect from him towards women or towards the downtrodden people. Rather, we see the opposite. If we see Yudhishthira in parallelly, he had a respect for all types of people in society. If we see in the fifth Parva, in the Udvaga, and then when Sanjaya comes with the Dhritarashtra's message to him, when Sanjaya is departing, then Yudhishthira is asking him to inquire the well-being of everyone of Hastinapura, and that includes everyone, including the guards and the servants of the palace, all the women of the palace, and outside the palace there are the beggars, the people of living in the streets of Hastinapura, the handicaps, even the prostitutes. So how wide vision ruler he was, we can understand how caring he was to all kinds of people. He did not discriminate. But we don't see such a ruler in Karna, because we can see his discussion with Shala in the just before the his final battle. He used to even sell women and children. The That was the tradition of Ongo, if I may say more. So actually, I don't think that he did something for the upliftment of those people.
Okay. So that brings me another interesting point you mentioned about the main narrator of Mahabharata, Ugrashrava being the Suta himself. The Yadavas are Sutas, and somehow Suta is wrongly being understood as a charioteer. Of course, charioteer, the role of a charioteer was one of the roles that Sutas took up, right?
But
And
they
if I
were very
remember
close to the
right,
royals.
yes,
They were
and
very
that
close
is
to them.
not a that's not
No,
a, anyway a lowly role. And
no.
the charioteer and the warrior, they need to be in perfect sync with each other to actually execute a war strategy.
They
Maybe
couldn't do
partly
more.
blame should fall on all these visual adaptations of Mahabharata, where they show stationary chariots and then arrows that defy gravity and politely meet each other and all that. So that showing of stationary charioteer, I think that has degraded the respect for charioteers as such in the minds of general public, and then they started attributing something called charioteer son as something low or an insult or something like that, right? So that I mean, thank you about Karna. I mean, I took the liberty to deviate from the main topic because you have read the Mahabharata and allied works
Behind.
very deeply. So tell us something. Actually, Simanti, questions from the audience have started flowing right now, and I just take another 15 minutes. This is for the benefit of aspiring writers and other lovers of Mahabharata. Uh, so the next couple of questions we are we shall try to absorb as much knowledge from Bhakti as we can about her writing journey. So how was it about writing, because especially Rise of Dharma, and I think the next two books that will follow, these are written in the first person from the eyes of Yudhishthira. And writing in first person is a challenge in itself, because a lot of important incidents where the protagonist is not present, we don't get the visual representation of that. It would be a tell version. Whatever we get will be a tell version. So what were your challenges as a writer, Seema?
Well, so I must say that initially what I actually wrote, that was not even a first draft. If I may say, if something can be called a negative draft, it was that. So over the years, I have to learn a lot about the art of writing. I had researched a lot. I had studied uh, in Google and internet and some books, and then I somehow understood this POV, the point of view writing, and I decided already that I will choose the first person POV to bring Yudhishthira closer to the readers. So it was a deliberate choice from the beginning. I did not change that. And regarding the writing, it took a lot. It totally took actually almost 6 years to bring it to this shape. So it was all writing and rewriting before that. I remember that initially the draft was more than 100K words, and I had to cut down a lot, and now it is below 80K. So I had cut down a lot. All of my the scenes I have loved, I have cut down.
So
So I don't know.
had you imagined that this would be a trilogy, or were you planning for a trilogy or one book, or how did it happen?
Initially, I did not have any specific plan. Just I started as it came, the ideas came and the scenes came, I started writing. Then, at a point near the Lakshagriho incident, when I was writing that, I felt that it would be very big if I try to finish everything in one book. So, I then decided to break it up because I was writing in very detail, and if anyone has read the book, he or she will see that I have tried to put every character in their details. So that detailing was in my mind that I wanted to give space to everything and every event and every character. That's why I thought that a series is required for that and more books.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And how was the publishing journey? Because I know that the way publishing industry has, I know now a lot of things are changing at the present moment as we speak, but a book on Yudhishthira would not have been publisher's favorite. If I don't know if I'm wrong in saying that, but how was the experience with the publishers, and what made you go for Kindle Direct Publishing, as well as then I think the traditional publisher happened after you self-published the Kindle version of the. So the viewers, Simanti, she had self-published the Kindle version of Rise of Dharma, uh, and she still holds the rights for the digital edition. And Om Sai Tech Books approached her for the print distribution rights, and because of that, we have the hard copy of Rise of Dharma with us. And again, I can't wait for the next two books. Do tell us about your experience with self-publishing. This is again for the benefit of younger writers, aspiring writers who are watching you.
Well, so like many other authors, I also faced a lot of rejection from the traditional publishers. When I approached them, I sent mails to them. Few of them reverted back with the rejection letters, not a letter, just a plain line that we don't take, we can't take. That is the pure rejection, and obviously that hurts. And some of them did not reply at all. So then I thought that I have to self publish, because I have to publish what I have written, not for myself. I always used to remind myself throughout the journey, throughout all my writer's block, that I'm not doing this for myself but for my protagonist, for my Yudhishthira. I'm doing this and I have to do it for him. So I did not wait longer. I then went for self publishing, and Amazon KDP was my first preference in that, because I was very inspired by my writing mentor and guide, who is none other than you, Sai Sarupa. And
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I was very much inspired by your self-publishing journey, as you have started your own journey. So I thought to follow on your footsteps, and I also I also went to the self-publishing, and what I found that Amazon KDP is very author friendly. We get a lot of features here that is very useful for any beginners. That is, be it the promotional marketing tools or be it the your liberty to change anything post publishing. That is a very rare privilege any author could get. After publishing, you can change even your content and manuscript, cover, blurb, anything you can change. That
Yeah.
is a very rare advantage. So I would suggest any aspiring author to try it because it is, I myself enjoyed a lot. And then the hard copy was taken by the publisher Om Scitek Books. I'm really grateful to them so that I can hold my book my own hands today. I'm grateful to them for that.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So viewers who are watching us live, this is a good opportunity to ask your questions regarding Mahabharata, Yudhishthira, unknown aspects of Mahabharata, writing and publishing with Simanti. Please do type your questions on the chat bot or the question and answers. We'll take them up one by one. So before we open up the floor for questions from the audience, Simanti, tell us about your schedule for the next two books. So have you started writing? When can we see the book two? And what exactly would it deal with? I can easily guess that it will definitely have the dice game and should be the Vanaparva as well. So that would be the highest book in the series because it has some really steep trajectories of the character. So, if you can do, please share with us about your experience of writing book two, because I know that you are quite on an advanced stage of writing book two.
Okay, so yes, I have already started writing the book two, that is titled as the Trials of Dharma. And
Trials of Dharma.
Trials of Dharma.
Beautifully written.
Initially, I thought as a title that Rise After a Fall, because not only the fall, I want to focus on the rise. So initially that was the title, but that is the actually I have given out my theme actually for the book two. That is the theme because it will start with his fall and will end with his rise. Fall means obviously it will start with the infamous game of dice, and after that his exile and how he learned and corrected his mistakes, how he prepared himself in those 13 years, and it will end most probably after the Virata Parva, that is the incognito. After the incognito period, it will end. So I have started writing, and it is going to be one of the most difficult part for me to. First of all, for any author, I think writing the second book is the most difficult, and secondly, I am this. I have myself chosen this topic, which is very difficult itself, and writing dice game and these things from the perspective of Yudhishthira is just emotionally killing me because that is very emotional part to write from an author. I'm just self-editing my first draft, yet to send it to the editor. And what is going on?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now, I won't take more time. That should rightfully belong to the audience here. So we have a question from an anonymous attendee who says, similar to Yudhishthira, Nakula and Sahadeva aren't that much, aren't given that much importance where when they were the epitome of medical treatment to the group. So what inspired you to write upon Yudhishthir only? So the user is anonymous, so I have no way of knowing his name. But having read the book, I think Simanti tried to focus though it is written from the perspective of Yudhishthira, she tried to focus on the strengths of all the Pandavas. But over to you, Srimanti.
Well, so I actually chose Yudhishthira because, well, he is one of the underexplored characters of the Mahabharata, and I have a plan to work on the other underexplored characters of from both the epics in future. So the twins might come in that. So even if not is a full length novel, even if a short story, twins might come in that, because I always plan to write about the lesser known characters and the underexplored both male and female characters. I like to explore them. So that is there in my mind.
Sure, thank you. The next question is from Padmavati Krishna. She has two questions in fact. What are lesser known facts of Yudhishthira about Yudhishthira? And her second question is, how was the relationship between Yudhishthira and Dhritarashtra post Mahabharata war? That's a very interesting question.
Well, so for the first question, I think I have talked about some lesser known aspects. Another one I would say that is the I did not get time that, so I did not tell. Now I am telling. So that the Ghosha Jatra in the forest, that is one of the lesser known facts. Actually, not exactly lesser known, but we forget Yudhishthira's role in that particular episode, that it was he who insisted his brothers. Actually, initially Bhima was very happy. Well, Gandharvas are our best friends. What we could not do, Gandharvas are doing very well, etc., etc. But then Yudhishthira insisted his brothers that no, still Kauravas are our cousins and belong to our family. First point. Second point is, there are the women of Kuru household who are also seized by the Gandharvas. We cannot let them get disrespected by the others. So that made him insist his brothers to go and release them. He had a very good opportunity to take revenge. I would say two things he could do here. First is taking the revenge by doing the same thing on the women of the Kauravas, what they did to Draupadi. First one is that he could not do, because that was not his character. He could not lower himself to the standard of his enemy. He could not go to that level to take the revenge on the women. We would see always that he had a great respect for the women. He never disrespected any of the enemies or defeated king's women. So he could not do that. Second one, he had the option to of inaction, but he did not choose that also. He could sit quiet, that why should I interfere? But he did not do that also. He did take the action, and that shows him in a high standard, I feel. And what was the second question?
The relationship between Yudhishthira and Dhritarashtra post Mahabharata war. So basically, Dhritarashtra, though he did not fight, is the classical defeated king.
Yes, yes, obviously.
Right, and
So,
we all know how Yudhishthira was treated. Once he was defeated in the game of the dice.
yes.
So, how did Yudhishthira treat the king who he defeated?
Yudhishthira always respected all his elders from the childhood, from the very beginning. And to Dhritarashtra, I would say, since he himself was a fatherless man, Dhritarashtra was in the position of his father from the beginning. It was Dhritarashtra himself who did not give him that part from his side, and he always discriminated between his own sons and his nephews. But Yudhishthira, after the Kurukshetra, he always says that I do not want to rule. Uh, Uncle, this is your rule, and you take over. And then Dhritarashtra understands. And finally, what I love is that finally Dhritarashtra says to Yudhishthira that you are my son, but I could not recognize you, and I did not give you your share of while in time. That's why I have to see this day today that all my 100 sons are got killed. if I given your due to you in given time, then we would not have to see this day to day. That was something I would like.
Nice. Thank you for that again, Simranpreet. So Anuradha has a question. One, how does one differentiate one's work when so many people are writing on Mahabharata characters? I know all the Mahabharata books, especially fictional works, are unfortunately tabled under mythological fiction or these kind of categories. But Mahabharata deserves a genre of its own. Is what is my feeling. Maybe all the authors in the genre should put up a request to Nielsen to introduce a new category code or something for books just based on Mahabharata. But to answer Anuradha's question, yes, how would you ensure that your work stands out uniquely amongst these hundreds of books?
Now I tried from my side to make it stand out. Now rest the reader should say whether I could succeed or not. But initially I tried to differentiate from the other authors in the characterization of Yudhishthira, because if we see the other authors, they basically either overlook his role in the epic, or he is shown mostly in the negative light. And I have tried to show a different Yudhishthira, and also the other Pandavas also, and the Draupadi and Krishna. All the characters I have tried to give their due, and also some political aspects I have tried to capture like that. I have tried my best, and I'm still trying in the other two parts.
Okay, that's thank you. Now there are a bunch of questions, so unfortunately I'll have to summarize them. There are some common questions as well. Uh, Shrikant S and Ramesh Kini both have one question about the role of Bhagavan Vyasa during the times of Mahabharata. And Shrikant ji specifically asks if, like, how is the role of sage Veda Vyasa himself addressed in your particular book?
Yes, so without him, he is the very creator of the epic, and without going down to him, I believe we cannot start reading or writing on the epic. And obviously, due respect to him. And I have tried to portray him in my book as one of the mentors of my hero. He is one of the mentors of Yudhishthira. If you see chapter 4, his introduction is there. He is introduced as the mentor of the hero. When the hero is inspires the hero to be a hero, like that. So that is his role in the text also, which I tried to recreate.
I know even the appearance, the manifestation of Vedavyasa himself into the story is quite. He comes whenever the story is going to take a twist. He comes up like
Dramatic twist.
aesthetically. That's a very interesting point. So wherever Vedavyasa comes, okay, something is going to change here.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah, that. Shubham Datta. As what was your motivation while writing this great book? I guess Simanti has explained that. Then he says, how did you keep yourself going through the whole writing process, and what role does Krishna play in your book? And when we look at it, everything from Yudhishthira's POV, what is the role of Krishna?
Well, Krishna is not only his cousin or his friend. He also plays the role of one of his mentors, and the great guides of him. One of the guides of him who guides him to rise from where he were to what he reached finally. So we will see that it is Krishna who actually observes and selects him. I'm talking about my version. Who Krishna is actually observing and selecting him as the replacement of the Emperor Jarasandha, who was the uh, that time he was making the life of people hell. So as the replacement of him, Krishna first chooses Yudhishthira and then he plays the role to make him reach there to the imperial throne.
Sure. So then there are two more questions. Unfortunately, I think that's all we'll be able to accommodate for now. Ranjit asks, this is a trick question. If Karna was alive after the war, would Yudhishthira have made him the king out of respect? Or would he have denied Karna the position due to Karna's adharma? Uh, I know that Ranjit himself is a scholar in Mahabharata and the Puranas especially. So he carefully uses the word adharma instead of relationship here. So would Karna's role as the elder brother, would it have taken precedence, or his all his acts of adharma, would they have counted?
Well, difficult to say because as we see his hatred for Karna's adharma, what he has done to in the Daisal. After that, we see his hatred for the person. But after knowing Karna's truth, we see him cry a lot and lament a lot, regret a lot for killing him. So there, I think initially he would have thought something like I should not be the king. As we see after the Kurukshetra, he did not want to be the king, and everyone had to try a lot to make him rule. And initially, but if Karna was alive, I think that is very tricky to answer what to say. Maybe finally, initially, maybe a conflict could be there between his ideals and the relation or the that thing, the emotions. But at a time I believe that he would overcome that conflict and the let dharma rule, let dharma prevail after the initial conflict is over, because that is what he is made of. And he has faced many conflict in his life, but every time we can see that he let dharma prevail. So I believe he would do that this case only.
That's a very diplomatic answer, I guess, Timothy. Yes, it was a tricky question, and sometimes questions like this, I know they bother me too when I speculate, and we just have to thank Vedavyasa or the destiny that things happened the way they did.
And Arjuna for killing him.
Yeah. So Ajit has a question. What was the take of Yudhishthira on Kurukshetra before the war? We only his basically he means to ask. There is a lot of focus on Arjuna's thoughts before the war. Like he thinks about what would the destruction that would happen and the effect it would have on the society. Basically, all the Kshatriya fathers are going to die. Where would the mothers go? Where would the young children, orphan children, what would their state be? And what is the whole point of this victory that is achieved by killing our own? But what was Yudhishthira's take? Because to my knowledge, once the war starts, we don't see Yudhishthira wavering. We see even Arjuna, losing it at times, especially when he came face to face with Bhishma or at times with Drona. But we don't see that wavering on Yudhishthira's part once the war starts. But
Yes.
before the war, what was exactly Yudhishthira? What was his take?
Before that, I would like to say that what he tells Sanjaya, that when he brings Dhritarashtra's message, that Dhritarashtra is asking for that, well, you are a very good boy, you please don't fight, don't kill my sons, like something like that, if I summarize. So when Sanjaya brings that message to him, we see him in a very strong and powerful position to say that I am ready for both. I am ready for both war and the peace. It is your choice what you decide. It is your decision what you will do. If you prefer peace, I am ready for peace. If you don't, then come to the battlefield. And that shows that how much he has learned from the preparation of the 13 years, how much he has developed himself. That is very powerful part, that he is giving option to them that please put a tick mark what you want.
That's interesting. Now, the last question for the day. So, sorry to everyone who could not get their questions answered, but I would say do please engage with Simanti on her Twitter ID as well as Facebook. She's active, very active on social media. Very vocal about her views as she keeps studying the Mahabharata. And so you're please welcome to interact with her. Also, please be a part of our Facebook group where we'll continue to have vibrant discussions such as this. So the last question for the day, Simanti, would be from Ramesh Kini, who asks, we have heard from many notable authors that Yudhishthira is gullible in nature. Example, dice game and mainly and then many others. With this quality, can he become a good ruler? So here I think we lack some insight into Yudhishthira as a ruler, right?
He was a very good ruler, and there was a reason that he is called the king of Dharma. There is a reason for that, and no one else. Krishna himself calls him that. That you, by nature, you are the king of Dharma. That is a discussion in the exile. So there must be a reason for that, and many times we see Arjuna praising, others praising that he did follow the very basic, the very first rule of Raja Dharma, that he used to treat his subjects like a father would do to his children. That is said many times in the text. So I think from that aspect we can say that he was a good ruler, and there I don't have any doubt on that. He was one.
So I guess we will see his, your future books should carry a couple of chapters about his rule. I think Rise of Dharma itself has quite some detail into Yudhishthira's role as a Yuvaraja and what are the kinds of reforms he tried to bring out in Hastinapura as a Yuvaraja before they were sent out to the this Varanavata to be burnt in a house of lac. So that brings us effectively to the end of this session, and there are so many interesting comments by the viewers. For example, when we were discussing the point about sutas, Pranshu Saxena gets to add. I'm just reading it out for the benefit of all the viewers who would be watching this in future as well. So he says Kekaya is a suta. Sharda, Sardandayani especially. Okay. Anupas, that is Neela, and who is the best friend to Bhima, he's a Suta. Matsyas, everybody, yes, Simanti had talked about Kichaka and Sudeshna especially. So then there are quite a few Kshatriya families who had Brahmin mothers, and hence there were Sutas. Vandi, son of Varuna, was a Suta, and also Akrata Varna, who is a disciple of Parashurama. He was also a Suta, because that's, we come across some kind of criticism against Parashurama also for cursing Karna and all that. So thank you, Pranshu. I guess that's all. There's one suggestion about a book called A Hindu Primer Yaksha Prashna by Dr. A.V. Srinivasan, Parijata Publications. Listeners may really appreciate this gem of a book for children and other adults. This is being recommended by Jasmine Shaw. Thank you, Jasmine, for being a part of this program and this wonderful suggestion. And again, my request to everybody to be a part of Indic Book Club Facebook group. Do please get your copy of Rise of Dharma, give it a read, and do interact with Seemanti. I guess uh, I am very sure that you would find out a lot of unexplored parts of Mahabharata by interacting with her. And thanks a lot, Simanti. We are waiting. All the best for your book too. All of us are waiting
Thanks a
for
lot.
that for the release date. And Indic Book Club as well as Indic Academy will stay in touch with you for further discussions. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks all of you.